I don't have that much to say on zeitgeist. My first hit was, I don't think there is a zeitgeist. But I guess if there's always a now, there's always a spirit of the now. So then I was like, well, maybe the spirit of the now, and it's, I guess it's so personal how we all experience the, we influence our own gaze so heavily. But what I see is fracture and disorganization and a lack of a central now in the Bay Area. And I think there have been times when more people have felt it more or less, maybe in different communities even. But I think that the wider that we open our view, the less we realize that there's any kind of central organizing principle to what's going on. And I actually think that the Bay Area, dance-wise, is in an awkward moment right now. I think that there's a lot of finding voice, there's a lot of struggling. I think that the issues about money that we said we wouldn't spend our time talking about, which I'm a big fan of not spending all our evening talking about that, but I think that it's remiss to not recognize how much economics influences the work that gets made and how it gets made. And so if I talked about some of the zeitgeist being about marginalization, about people who are working in non-dance environments, which 3 out of the 5 companies we saw tonight do, even Sarah 4, really everyone does it at some point or another. And even that's an open invitation, I feel like, that continually happens, not just in the Bay Area, but in contemporary work. But I think a bunch of that is also part of an economic thing, of people struggling to find new forums, new markets, new places to make $5. So, what else? That's it. I think there are other things that are long-term historic currents of Bay Area dance and performance, and I think those were spoken to by different people, but I think that's separate from what's the now.
Yeah, I like the way you talked about there being different times when different, I want to say hotspots within the community have their heyday or have their, I feel like what it actually is like the mainstream is aware of it, and you'll have that popular choreographer who's doing that thing, whatever that thing is, and then maybe that sparks a funding boom in that area, maybe, but I don't know, and I think that the Bay Area is so diverse, sexually, culturally, all these, in close proximity. San Francisco is a really small city, and I think that within neighborhoods there's a lot of diverse communities, and so I think that there's an awareness of that. So,
Yeah, I think if anything, one thing I've always thought that is a hallmark of the Bay Area scene is this funny sense of fracturization that's been around for a long time, really, and I feel, if anything, maybe something like this is a way to turn the focus on that and see what we can do with it. Because I don't think that it's necessarily only now, although I agree that there's definitely some of it now, and how can we work with it? And there may be some positive things to it as well, that the way in which the Bay Area is fractured into all of these little communities, all doing interesting things, maybe all doing small things, and doing an incredibly lot of different things, there may be some interesting way to kind of connect them without hurting them, and make something interesting. So anyways, you guys talk more, it's good. Let's see, shall we go back, let's go to thinking about illuminating a relationship to our past, both trends and historical figure. Is there anything else people want to say about that? I think that we just kind of touched on it by having Sarah there, and there's a lot of work that could be done. Some work has been done, by people writing histories of what's gone on here. I think that there certainly is a lot more work in that area that could be done. But does this spark anything for you about that sort of thing? How can we use that to kind of really name who we are now, what's going on?
I could say briefly, just what I've seen as more of an academic lineage, I know that Alyssa studied under Jean Watanabe and Melissa Fleming, so they're still in the academic world, but I'm not, I don't know, that's all I can say right
now. I'm pretty obsessed with Bay Area history at this point right now. I feel like it's so nebulous, it's so unstudied in a certain way. I think the schools do play a big role, even though sometimes historically that's been a negative role. Like, they've played a role in their absence or their lack of connection to community. And I think UC Berkeley has had a really particular negative role that it played for a long time, from my perspective, in terms of what it was considering as important to teach dancers. I remember sitting on a panel and going through Mills graduates one year, and it was like I saw about 20 different, no, maybe only 10 different people out of, say, 50 in the Bay Area that had come from Mills. And by the end of the 10th one, I was like, I've got to write these people a letter and figure out why these people are getting degrees. Like, I was in this super critical moment, and I feel like that was already 5 years ago, and I feel like the amount of change that's happening at dance schools all over, that's also happening in the Bay Area, it's happening with you, it's happening with other people, just different people coming into USF, and I think we might even see a change at State, which would be really interesting for those of you who don't know. San Francisco State made a decision at a certain point to basically drop European forms in modern dance, and to me what that created in the Bay Area was even more distinction between some idea about ethnic and contemporary dance. And when that line got drawn in the Bay Area, partly because of Ethnic Dance Festival, partly because I think what goes on at State, partly because of how San Francisco and the Bay Area looks at racism, anti-racism, and ideas that we might call political correctness and stuff like that about race, it made really some divisions that didn't happen in Europe in the same way, didn't happen even in New York and LA in the same way, in terms of how people were locating their work and the distance that was being created between ethnic forms and modern forms, and then between white and people of color, or then what it was for the people who were working in the white forms and that kind of thing. So I think all those things affect history. I think there's this larger history of libertarianism that links Isadora Duncan to Anna Halprin, to Sarah Shelton Mann, to Madison Young. Like that there's many people in it, and at the same time it's also really, I've had a lot of contact with people from Europe. There's people staying at my house right now who are in town doing a lengthy study of all the different scores and performances of Anna Halprin's Parades and Changes. And it's like, again, they're coming from Europe to go, what was this key moment in postmodern dance? How did new processes get created? And I've talked to the European people who have come to San Francisco to see the contemporary work that evolved from this, and they can't find it. Like, they're in town, they're calling people, they go to ODC, they see 10 different companies in a day, and they're like, wait, where's the people who were inspired by contact improvisation, Anna Halprin, postmodern dance, crawling on the ground, hanging out in trees? Like, where are they? And the truth is that they're actually all over the Bay Area, but there's not a central place to go, and those of us who work in those kind of postmodern ideas, we're not located at a single studio, even Counterpulse, although you'd find more here than probably anywhere else. So those are just a few ways to talk about history for me, mostly critical, but I love San Francisco, I do. Oh, right.
You don't have to. Yeah. Okay, fine. Let's see. Other questions? Okay, thank you so much. So, last question, just to mash around up here, is so thinking about how this work illuminates, as Paige calls it, the genetics of the Bay Area scene, these underlying core characteristics. Draw me some connections. Fill me in. Is there anything more to say here?
Well, I think there are some things that are particular to the Bay Area that I hesitate to just name them in such a specific way, but I do think that it's not an accident that that we went from the Beats to the hippies to just many different moments of groundbreaking work. Why did contact improvisation have more of a home here than many other places for so long? I think that there is a kind of West Coast, move west, pioneering, try new things, break the connection with the East that tried to break its connection with Europe. I think that once the Rockies were crossed, the Great Divide was